Today we are going to talk about fractions. Okay, fractions is basically part of a whole thing. So examples of fractions, of course, it's 1/2, 1/3, 2/5. Everybody knows what a fraction looks like. Quite simple. But how do you go between talking about a fraction, or you may want to talk about a decimal, and you maybe want to talk about a percent. How are they related? How are these let's see in there. How are these three things related? Fraction, decimal, percent. Okay, so let's just move on. So now let's look at a fraction as a part of a whole thing. A percent is a part of a whole thing. 100% is the whole thing. And a decimal, again, is a part of a whole thing. So let's take a common fraction, 1/2. Okay? So that's the fraction. So if you were to change 1/2 to a percent, you typically know 1/2 is basically what? 50%. And if you wanted to convert that to a decimal, so you look at half of something, a whole thing, 1 to 10, whole thing. But if you look at a half of anything, it will be 0.5 as a decimal, or 0.50, because the whole thing would be just one whole thing, one. Okay, but how do you come up with that? How do you know that? You sort of just know a half is 50%, but do you know what, say, 3/5 is as a percent? Okay, or as a decimal. So I'm going to just show you one way you could always figure out what a fraction is and figure out how to convert, in other words, a fraction like 3/5 to a decimal. We're going to do the decimal first. Then we're going to do the percent. Okay, so how are we going to convert 3/5 to a decimal? Okay, let's try it. Okay, you have the number 3/5. You simply divide the bottom number, which is the 5, into the top number, which is the 3. Now you think, how am I going to divide 5 into a 3? Well, you add a decimal and zeros, so you're able to do it. Okay, how many zeros? Well, as many as you need to get to where the answer comes out even, or you can round it off. So let's start with our division. Now 5 will not go into 3, right, because it's not enough. So we can let a 0 place that area there if you like, but you don't have to. But you can divide 5 into 30, right? 5 will go into 30 6 times, and 6 times 5 is 30. We don't need the rest of these zeros because it came out even. So bring the decimal straight up. I forgot to tell you about that. Whenever you have a decimal underneath the divisor, you bring it straight up in the answer. So you see the answer is 0.6 or 6/10. 6/10 with a TH. Okay, why is it 6/10? Because it's not a whole thing. If it was a number here, it would be 1 6/10. But that's just 6/10 means it's a part of something, because we already know it's a part of something, because 3/5 is not the whole thing. Okay, it's a part of something. So 3/5 is the same as 0.6 or 6/10 as a decimal. Okay, so I said 3/5. We already say is 0.6 with a point there as our decimal. Okay, so now how do we change that to a percent? So we see 3/5 as a fraction. We have 0.6 as a decimal. So what is the percent? Very simple. To change a decimal to a percent, you simply move the decimal 2 places to the right. Let me change the color a little bit. So we're going to move this decimal 2 places, 1, 2, Boy, I made that too thick. Let me go back to where I was. Okay, so bring it down some. So 2 places to the left. So we moved it 2 places. So now it's 60%. So let's go back to our original number. 3/5 is the same as 0.6 is a decimal, which is 6/10, which is the same as 60%. Okay? So you look at the number, you say, okay, think about how big is 3/5. Well, it's pretty close to a whole thing because 5/5 would be the whole thing. Okay? 3/5 is only a part of it, which thereby is a fraction. So it's part of the whole thing. Okay? So 3/5 is the same as 0.6 is the same as 60%.